Weekend Variety Wireless.
Stumbled across a really good YouTuber as well, another one. His name's Telltale, an ex-Jehovah's Witness. He's calm, he's assured, he's not mean, he's not, surprisingly, he's not angry, but he is damned enlightening. We'll be speaking with the next Jehovah's Witness very shortly, but I'll just give you a little taste of this cat.
When I was talking about Hurricane Katrina and how Jehovah's Witnesses were sending people down to repair other Jehovah's Witnesses houses. They're both very self-centered and very altruistic at the same time. It's an interesting combination. An interesting case study to manage to have both of those qualities, each for a different population. So that's the first problem with Jehovah's Witnesses. They're honestly good people when you get on the inside. They're raised to be honest to a fault and altruistic. But both of those qualities come with caveats. Honest as long as it doesn't harm the Watchtower Society in any way, which means they're required to lie in service of the organization. And altruistic toward other Jehovah's Witnesses. Sometimes those qualities leak out into other parts of the person's life. So that's beneficial to some extent. Now, I mentioned there were a few things that just disintegrated any good Jehovah's Witnesses might do for people. The altruism thing, that only really becomes useful for society if the person leaves the religion. If the person leaves, they allow that trait of altruism to propagate to more than just fellow Jehovah's Witnesses. All
right, that's a little from Telltale. Joining us is Shayne Mechen, former Jehovah's Witness, was a Jehovah's Witness for 42 years. Welcome to the program. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Are you familiar with Telltale? What do you make of his take on being an ex-Jehovah's Witness?
Accurate. He describes how things are exactly right, and he's very realistic as to what he presents on his YouTube channel.
A Jehovah's Witness for 42 years, not simply a follower of the religion, but you were an elder as well.
Yeah, well, the first time I went to the Kingdom Hall, not that I can remember it, but it was around January the 30th of 1968. I was only 3 days old. And my parents, as they always encouraged, were to take their children along and either drag them up, that's what I call it, or bring them up in the way that they were encouraged to. I got baptised at 15. You sort of progress along the way. Became a ministerial servant around 21. I was that for about 5 years. 26, 27, I became an elder. You continue to do training and they encourage you to do different things. And basically, I guess I was a perfect example of watching Watchtower and following their procedures and their policies.
We'll get into what the mindset was and probably is of the Jehovah's Witness, but just a little on who on earth they are. They're an end-of-the-worldy outfit. Eschatological, I think, is the theological term, end-of-the-world stuff. They kind of related to the Seventh-day Adventists, but might not say that now. What's the deal there, Shayne?
Yeah, well, back in the 1800s, they split from the Millerites, and there was a Seventh-day Adventist and Jehovah's Witnesses. They came from the same dot in time, and because they didn't like some of the things, they split, and Jehovah's Witnesses came from the Bible Student Association early last century, 1900s, and we've got Jehovah's Witnesses as we have them now.
What do they believe in?
All sorts of things. They started off with certain times and dates in mind when the world was going to come to an end. One of the big ones was 1975. That was a total failure because, as you know, it's now 2018. So their prophecies or their prophetic sorts of things totally whacked out of the hemisphere, as it were, because a lot of their beliefs are wrong, they're false, and they're apostate.
Okay. Revelation's the famous book, their favourite book by the sounds of it. And there's a thing to do with the Jehovah's about 114,000 people are going to be chosen.
Oh, you mean 144,000?
Pardon me. Oh, no, back of the class.
That's all right. Yeah, they believe 144,000 are going to be going to heaven. Those ones are going to be ruling over the ones who are going to be left here on the earth for 1,000 years, and then paradise will come.
So they're not the only bunch that believe in whack stuff. For goodness sake, what makes it a damaging thing? What's wrong with them?
Okay, I guess what you've got to understand about the witnesses is, like Telltale said in that video clip, there are some very nice, good people, lovely, lovely people. What happens in the Watchtower organisation? Jehovah's Witnesses follow a set of procedures that what is called the governing body, that is 8 men in charge of what they say is over 8 million followers here on the earth. They set guidelines. Some of the wacky things that when I started to do what they told me, because like you would prepare a thing, they used to have a Bible reading highlights. Now, they encourage you to do practical search and apply it practical. After being out for about 8 years, I started to do some practical search, and some of the wacky things I came across was in the elders book. Now, I was an elder for over 10 years, and I truly believed what I was doing was right. I really wanted to help the ones in the congregation. And in their latest elders book, they basically say that if an appointed elder has made a mistake, which was many years ago, so say he slept with a woman, and it wasn't known, and then a few years later it became public or he confessed, he would not necessarily be removed as an elder if it appeared that Jehovah's blessing was on that individual, which means basically having parts on the meetings and being active and looking to the outside that he was a good guy. But if it was a normal publisher, and that's what you call Jehovah's Witnesses that knock on your door, they would get removed for such activities. When I saw that, I thought, nah, this is not right. And I started looking for other things. Like some of the other things. And anybody can do a search. If they go to Google and do a search, look up Jehovah's Witnesses and child sex abuse. Now, I grew up in that organisation thinking that it was clean. You know, they used to bag, and they still do, the Roman Catholic Church. They give them heaps because of their child abuse. Now, do a Google search and you will find just recently they just lost a $35 million lawsuit because of abuse within their organisation. Now, I have evidence that even far back as the early 90s, a letter that I have indicates they knew that there were things that were going on in court cases dealing with child abuse. You can do another search and just look up the, put a search in like Jehovah's Witnesses, what stocks do they own? And you will find from the IRS, Inland Revenue reports, that they own shares in Boeing Co., General Dynamics, Honeywell, Lockheed Martin. What do they all have in common, you reckon?
They're quite successful? I don't know.
Yeah, they do. But they make war weapons of mass destruction.
Oh.
And yet they go on about the peace and security and how witnesses should not be going to war. And through one way or another, they have shares now that earn them millions of dollars. You know, back in a few years ago on their broadcast channel, a guy by the name of Stephen Lett went on JW Broadcasting and said, we have money going out and it's more than the money coming in. Now, with just two of their corporations, those two alone are worth $1.5 billion. And so from the previous 2 years of what they were talking about, they brought in or increased the value of Watchtower by $140 million.
Okay, one of the things, how did you get out of the church? How did you stop believing?
I sort of wandered out. I disassociated myself, and before I knew it, it was gone in my life. That was for a period of 8 years. I always thought it was a reasonable organisation. I thought they were kind, they were loving, and nothing much wrong was in that place until I learnt about the elders and what they did. And then looking at the Australian Royal Commission, which was completed last year in Australia, did you realise that in that organisation, that 1,006 members were criminals? They were pedophiles. Not one of those 1,006 members got reported to the police.
So the thing that is that makes you unhappy about this, of course, is the kind of internal protection of Jehovah's Witness for Jehovah's Witness?
Yes.
All
know, if a person was, much like, in the Catholic Church, they protect thousands of children. Jehovah's Witnesses, by means of the policies of the elders, now remember, the policies are dictated by the governing body and the elders have to follow it and copy it. So what happens is, imagine if an elder was to speak out about that, what do you think would happen?
Now, they'd be shunned, I suppose.
Well, possibly, but they get removed as an elder. Like in Ireland, there was a case where a body of elders had to deal with a child abuse case. Now, you've got to keep in mind also, no Jehovah's Witness elder is trained to look after child sex abuse. Even on their webpage, in their own statement, which came up earlier this year, it took them many, many years to get it up onto their own webpage, they say they look after the spirituality of the congregation. They never, ever report it to the police.
Okay, what is the view of the worldly ones, people that aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, from a Jehovah's Witness point of view? Give us what your mindset was for non-Jehovah's Witnesses from the witness point of view.
You don't have anything to do with them. It's as simple as that. Like, say you were working somewhere, they wanted to have drinks. We were encouraged not to have that because worldly people can get us to think wrong, can lead us into wrong actions, like going out and sleeping with somebody, doing drugs. They were trying to tell us to keep away from that. Now, I sort of tested that theory out. I was in the United States on work training, and I'd always been told this. I went along to something just to test out whether that theory was correct. It is furthest from any truth they could ever give us. The people who were non-Jehovah's Witnesses were kind, were loving, were supportive. They wanted you to succeed.
And
That's
you've
totally
been
different.
told that they're not, that
correct.
non-Jehovah's Witnesses are demonised, are going to turn you.
Drunkards, sex addicts, murderers, criminals, just not very nice people to hang around. So you might as well not hang around and just hang around with your brothers and sisters who you would call Jehovah's Witnesses.
And the shunning is a big part of Telltale's story, and he's not the only one as well, that if you either misbehave or walk away from the church, you don't see your family again. What happens? What are the rules? What happened to you?
Even to this day, I can't speak to my son. He was really blackmailed, and that's what happens. You get disfellowshipped, or even if you walk away from within the organisation, their view with regards to ones that are out there in the world, like you were speaking about before, is they are out to get you. So they excommunicate you, like the Catholics talk about. Now, they won't use that word. They will use disfellowshipping. They don't really use shunning as a word, even though they will go on TV and in courtrooms and say, no, we don't shun them. It's up to them what they do. But you ask any Jehovah's Witness who has been removed or who has walked away, ask them if they can talk to their children, to their mother, to their father, to their grandparents. They are not allowed to talk about anything unless it's a matter of medical emergency. Now, that's also a difference too, because some people have found that their parents, their grandparents, or somebody has died in the family, and they are not told until weeks or months later that they had died.
Are there parental legal responsibilities that get eschewed? If a, say, 15-year-old kid walks away from the church, not being talked to by their parents, don't they have a legal obligation?
You would think so. But where I live at the moment, there was a case of a young woman. She was 17. She did something wrong. She was disfellowshipped. The parents kicked her out, and she was all alone with nobody around. So it varies from family to family. Some will be brave enough to stick to their guns and look after their children. A large portion will just kick the kid out. leaving them to their own devices.
There's a way back, though, isn't there? What is the process from the Jehovah's Witness point of view for that child to come back to the fold? What is it like?
Terrifying. Basically, they're removed. So people, when there is an announcement, say, for example, me, if I'd done something wrong, they would say, Shayne Mechen is no longer a Jehovah's Witness. No member in the congregation is told. So regardless of whether they've walked away, whether they've done something very minor, many Jehovah's Witnesses will think, oh, they're weak, they've done something really major, and they're no longer a witness. What happens after that time is if a person decides to go back, he will need to go to all the meetings. He will sit in the back. Nobody will talk to him. He's not allowed to answer. He's not allowed to do anything. He'll walk in. He will listen to the meeting. He will then walk out. After some period of time, depending on what the gravity of the sin was, he can then reapply by writing a letter of reinstatement. The elders, normally the judicial committee that made the decision, will make sure they get to speak to the person, and then they will decide whether there is real remorse or humility on their part. If they go, no, you just got to keep on going, back to the meeting, sitting there with nobody talking to you, and you can imagine, while some of them will be happy to see you sitting in that hall, a lot of them will be talking about you behind your back.
Yeah.
And they keep doing that. They have to write another letter. I've heard of one case where it went on for 4 years trying to get back in there because the elders who dealt with them felt, whether it was because of evidence or their own feelings, they felt, no, you're not ready to come back.
Goodness knows what it would be like to be gay and a Jehovah's Witness. Would they say there aren't any? What happens? What's the attitude there?
They certainly don't like the activities of a gay person, whether male or female. They say, well, you can still be part of the organisation, but you must not practice it.
Oh, right. Yeah, hate the sin, love the person sort of attitude.
Yep, you've got it. Yep.
Okay. Treatment of women.
Well, the Watchtower has a very interesting view of women. I'll read a quote from a governing body member, Samuel Hurd. He was, in one of his parts at the district convention, said, scientists say that the cranial capacity of a woman is 10% smaller than that of a man. So now this shows that she just is not equipped for the role of headship. Her role is one of submissiveness to the man. And all through, that is what is coming across. I've spoken to a couple of women just recently, and also many throughout New Zealand, and one thing stands out. To the woman, when they speak and ask for help, now we're talking about help with their abusive husband, help with their children, help with other issues. One woman got told, you've got to pray more. You've got to study more. You've got to read the scriptures, and you've got to be more submissive to your husband. Another woman, she'd been married for only 2 weeks, and the abuse started in her life. Now, what happened a few years later, she was pregnant at 5 years old. She was pregnant 5 months. According to the elders and what they heard from her husband, she apparently walked into his closed fist coming towards her at a fast rate of knots. They did not want to know what was happening in the way of abuse. He was a regular pioneer. He was a ministerial servant, and all the elders could say is, oh, he wouldn't do that. They did not listen to not only those two women, but the many women I've spoken to. To them, they say, oh, women are lovely, sweet things. They're there to help man. But they really do not care two hoots about looking after them when they're trying to cope with the abusive situations that they have going on in their family.
We're speaking with former Jehovah's Witness Shayne Mechen. One thing I notice in Jehovah's Witness videos and publications is repeated over and over again. It's got to be something up with it. respect the elders. The elders are God's gift to this earth. Literally, that's what they say. And they just is so much of this.
Yeah. So what they do in district assembly parts and in meetings is, because they're taking the lead, they're saying to Jehovah's Witnesses, you know, if you've got a problem, go to the elders. If you need to make a decision, you can work on it. But if you struggle, go to the elders. Whatever they say, regardless of whether they are saying something that's sensible or not, obey them.
What's the deal with the style of the videos? Really, it's so strange how they speak like this.
I think you could call them robots. They might be AI or something. But no, they're real people. As to what style...
Were you taught to speak like that?
No. When I was at Theocratic Ministry School, if somebody, overseer, if somebody was to speak like that, I'd pull them aside and we'll have a little chat to try and bring some life into
their official videos are like that. It's weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
You must have a sense of helplessness because you know exactly how you're viewed from the inside out.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I know with because the view of media and Jehovah's Witnesses is that this is all Satan's media. They will most probably not be listening to this.
No.
They won't be going on the internet because they're encouraged not to do Google searches, not to do YouTube. And yet in a watchtower just recently, they said to make an answer, but before you answer, make sure you've done your research and find out the facts. Now, they're not even told the facts. You know, they don't know what's going on in the world around them. In fact, they even said just recently at the annual general meeting that their broadcast station, JW Broadcasting, is going to be the only place they will need to go because the news is not fake news.
Yeah, but it's the cat's out of the bag. They must be absolutely petrified because people, they'll get onto Google and people are naturally inquisitive.
Yeah, and that's what we want to encourage them. The brilliant places to find facts out about the JW organisation.
But the authorities, the bosses in New York, they must be absolutely petrified.
Well, when you get to speak with one, you might be able to ask them that.
Okay. Shayne Mechen, thank you so much. Good luck. You can't speak to your sons, any other relatives that have come with you on this journey, or are you shunned? Are you the only one?
No, I've got most of my family's out. But what I've found through this whole series of events that's happened in the last 8-9 months is that, and this is something we want to really make clear to ex-Jehovah's Witnesses who may be listening, Jehovah's Witnesses who may be sitting on the fence, and the public, that there is a Facebook group out there. It's lifeafterjw.org. That page has a team behind it that is willing and waiting to show support for anybody unquestionably. As far as Jehovah's Witnesses is concerned, their love is only conditional. If they're in there, they love them. If they're out, they're not. This group of individuals who's behind that Facebook page, lifeafterjw.org, are there to help them, are there to support them, are there to show them love. They will love them. They know what it's like coming out. They know that they want them to be happy, just like all ex-JWs.
Yeah, I've heard so many people that have come out or have stepped away have felt as though they were the only ones.
Yeah, and that's the common story. They just don't know there's help out there. This ex-JW community, for example, like myself, when I first went onto the internet, I was scared because of the training to Google Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right. Shayne, thank you. We have to pull up stumps at this juncture, but I'll just say it one more time. lifeafterjw.org if you want help. I appreciate your story. Thank you, Shayne.
Thank you.
The Weekend Variety Wireless.